Okay, guys, it says that we're live, so I am going to take for granted that it's working. I wanted to talk today about something that someone actually asked in a comment in a recent video that I did. I did a video, I can't remember the name of it. What was it about? Oh, it was about the return of Christ was the name of the video. And I was talking about how in all of these different traditions, what all of these things are symbolizing is presence, embodied presence, being in the present moment. But they're all done through all kinds of different symbols. There's symbols in Christianity and symbols in alchemy and every other tradition you can think of. They all speak in metaphors. And someone asked, why is that the case? They said, if this stuff is so important, it seems like this is like the most important thing that there is for humanity to learn, to understand this stuff and practice this stuff. So why is it all in symbols? Why did they not just give it to us? Why did they not just tell us? And it's a really good question, but that's what I want to address right now. And that's why I titled this the Book of Revelation, because they were asking me about the Book of Revelations in particular. Someone asked me if all these traditions, Zen, alchemy, even Christianity, are really pointing toward embodied presence, then why write something like the Book of Revelation in allegory and metaphor? Why not just explain it plainly in words anyone can understand? It's a good question. It's a fair question. It's the exact kind of question most people would ask in the beginning stages of practice. I think that's something that occurs to everybody at some point. Like, why didn't they just say this outright? When you're just starting out, you want clarity. You want maps. You want instructions that you can follow easily. You want someone to tell you exactly where to go, how to sit, what to chant, how to pronounce certain words, which rituals will work for you. Like, we almost want to be fed like baby birds. We want someone to explain step by step what's going on here. I did too. I didn't have that because I was in prison, but that's what everyone wants at some point. And, so what I'm saying is I understand that very deeply. But the thing is, wisdom that's just handed to you like that, in plain, straightforward language, isn't going to transform you. It's not going to change you. It may inform you, but it's not going to transform you. It may even inspire you for a time, but information is not transformation. Knowledge can be memorized and repeated without ever changing the person who speaks it. That's why the true masters across all of these different traditions use symbols, allegories, paradox, metaphor, not to make things harder, but to make them real. Take the Book of Revelation. On the surface, it's kind of bizarre. You've got these scenes of angels blowing trumpets that unleash plagues. You've got a dragon waiting to devour a child. You've got beasts rising from the sea, a new heaven and a new earth descending at the end of time. None of it reads like a clear roadmap. It reads like a dream that someone has a severe fever would have. But that's the point. Revelation is not a book that you understand one time and then file it away. It's a text that confronts you with images so strange and so saturated with meaning that you're forced to wrestle with them. They don't yield their fruit easily. You have to sit with them, sometimes for years, until they begin to work on you from the inside out. That's how alchemy works too. No alchemist who ever mattered thought the texts were really about turning lead into gold. They knew the metaphors of the Red King, the White Queen, the marriage of sulfur and mercury. All these different things are pointing to something inside of us, inside of the person practicing. But they didn't write it in plain, literal language, because if they did, the ego would have grabbed hold of it and said, perfect, I understand this now. I'm done. And you see that all the time in magic. People who've read a lot of books and think that since they've read this and since they understand it on an intellectual level, that they've done the work. That's not the same thing as doing it. And that's one of the dangers of just saying this stuff to people straight out. If you do that, the work stops before it ever really begins. And in Zen, it's exactly the same. Teachers speak in koans. Koans are like riddles that make no sense to the rational mind. Things like, what's the sound of one hand clapping? Or if you meet the Buddha, strike the Buddha down. These sayings weren't designed to confuse. They were designed to break the stranglehold of your intellect, of your mind. They leave you with nowhere to stand intellectually. And in that groundless space, presence finally appears. It jams your intellect up, makes you, gives you something that you can't digest intellectually until eventually you find yourself just here. The difference between information and transformation is the difference between reading a recipe and actually cooking the meal. You can memorize every ingredient, every measurement, every step of the process, but until you enter the kitchen, actually chop the vegetables, burn your hands, and taste the finished dish, you really don't know. You only think you know. That's what allegory does. It forces you into the kitchen. It denies you the comfort of believing that knowledge is enough. It keeps you in the tension, in the wrestling, in the unknowing, until the symbol begins to dissolve into actual lived experience. When you see a beast with 10 horns and 7 heads in Revelation, your rational mind scrambles for categories and explanations. Is it prophecy? Is it politics? Is it coded history? None of those questions are wrong, but they're not the point of it. The point is what happens inside you when you sit with that image, when you allow it to become a mirror for your own shadow, your own inner beasts. The ego despises allegory because it can't control it. The ego loves very clear rules. Do this, get that. It loves shortcuts and guarantees. It wants certainty. Allegory refuses to give any of those things. Allegory speaks in riddles, in dreams, in symbols that slip through your fingers no matter how tightly you try to hang on to them. When I was on death row, I didn't want allegory. I didn't want metaphor. I wanted results. I wanted justice. I wanted freedom. I went through all these rituals out of desperation, trying to summon a way out of a situation I had no worldly power to escape. At first, the ambiguity of magic and internal alchemy, its symbolic language and internal metaphors or endless metaphors felt incredibly frustrating. I used to wish that I had someone who could just explain this stuff to me. Why not just tell me what's going to work? Why not just show me what's going to set me free? But over time, something shifted. The very fact that there were no easy answers forced me to go deeper. The rituals became less about demanding outcomes and more about steadying myself, sharpening my mind, enduring the daily grind of waiting to die for a crime I didn't commit. Allegory and symbol gave me something that literal answers never could, a way to step outside the ego's endless bargaining and into actual presence. In that sense, the book of Revelation saved me just as much as the Diamond Sutra or the old grimoires of Western ceremonial magic. Not because I decoded it like a puzzle, but because I learned to let it burn me down from the inside until something freer could emerge. Think of allegory as like a fire hidden inside of words. If the teaching were given to you directly, it would be like giving you cold food. Easy to chew, but no nourishment in it. Symbol and metaphor are the flame that cooks the food. They change it from raw potential into something you can actually digest. That's why the alchemists wrote about dragons, about kings and queens, instead of brain chemistry and nervous system rewiring. That's why Revelation speaks of beasts, angels, and trumpets instead of bullet points. That's why Zen masters shouted, struck their students, and spoke in riddles instead of giving them straightforward textbooks. It's not because they wanted to confuse you. It's because they wanted to transform you. There's another reason traditions speak in allegory, and that's protection. If the deepest teachings were spelled out in plain language, anyone could use them with no preparation. They would become tools in the hands of egos, still enslaved by craving, by fear, by delusion. Imagine giving a child a weapon they don't know how to wield. They would destroy themselves with it. And that might not make sense right now. It will at some time in your journey if you continue on this path. I had a conversation with a friend of mine once. We were talking about someone who he had been tutoring in this process. And he said, I could never tell him all of this stuff right now. I could never tell him that the end result, the point of all this is to come back here, to be in this present moment, to experience life as it is happening right now. Because if I told him that, he would say, then what's the point of all this stuff? And he would just throw it away and give up. There is a point to it. It changes you when you go through this. That's the transformation. But by hiding the truth in metaphors, these traditions built in a kind of safeguard. If you're ready, the symbols open up to you. You understand them. You start to see the way in all things. They'll burn away your surface understanding and guide you deeper. If you're not ready, they'll remain closed. You can read them 100 times. You can read the book of Revelation over and over and over and still miss the point. That's not failure. That's mercy. It's why Jesus spoke in parables. It's why Buddha taught in stories. It's why alchemists veiled their writings in all of the symbolism. It's why Revelation thunders in images instead of instructions. The truth isn't hidden to punish you. It's hidden to protect you until you're strong enough to bear it. Ultimately, the point is not to decode all of these allegories. The point is to become them. The alchemical marriage, the Zen koan, the descent of the New Jerusalem, they're all symbols of the same thing. The transformation of your awareness here and now in this lifetime. When you stop treating allegory like a puzzle to be solved and start treating it like a fire to sit inside of, something shifts. You stop craving explanations and start living the mystery. You realize that the beast and the angels, the sword and the lotus, the Buddha and the Christ, none of these things are out there somewhere in some distant world. They're movements, things that happen inside your own consciousness. And when you see that, you no longer need to chase visions or prophecies. Life itself becomes your holy, sacred text. Every moment becomes revelation. Every single breath you take becomes alchemy. Every single action you perform becomes Zen. So why is Revelation and all of these other things written in allegories and metaphor? Because plain words don't change you. They don't transform you. They only inform you. That's the thing to take away here. Allegory forces you to wrestle with these things, to sit in the fire, the unpleasantness of not knowing until the ego begins to break down. It bypasses the intellect and reaches the deeper parts of the self that logic can never touch. In Zen, that's called the great doubt, the place where the mind has no ground left to stand, and presence is finally able to break through. In alchemy, we call it solve et coagula, the dissolving and reforming of the self. In Christianity, it's called revelation, the unveiling of what was always true, but hidden behind symbols. And the truth is this: the symbols were never meant to just entertain you or to confuse you and make you feel frustrated. They were meant to burn ego away until only presence remains. I hope you found this helpful in some way. And as usual, in closing, I just want to say thank you very much for being in my life. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for doing this work. It's not, I don't take those things for granted. I appreciate them very, very much. Thank you. And I will talk to y'all very soon.